We have uncovered evidence that has been kept from us. I'm talking about the falsely accused and imprisoned De Jesus brothers, who were convicted for the rape and murder of their next-door neighbor, Margaret Midkiff. We will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that their accuser, Brandon Gohagan, lied on the stand in order to save himself. We have tried for many years to obtain a copy of the crime scene footage. Thanks to a Freedom of Information request and the Hail Mary plea, the video that precedes this one, we were able to obtain it. If you haven't seen the Hail Mary plea, I suggest you go to YouTube for a more thorough explanation of the case. The prosecution used the actual killer as their star witness. Brandon Gohagan is a suspect in at least 3 murders. I've also uncovered 5 women that he has raped at gun or knife point. To give you an idea how heinous this guy is, one victim told police that he put a gun to her head and said, "You better F me by choice or they're going to find you dead in the bushes." I can't make this up. That's one hell of a witness. He is the closest to true evil I've ever met. When interviewing people that knew him better than I did, there was one recurring theme, and that theme was, that guy isn't right. Gohagan, in an effort to escape a life sentence, testified against the De Jesus brothers. He stated on the record that he raped the victim, Margaret Midkiff, on the command of Melvin De Jesus, and they went on to kill her while he went out and got some air. Yeah, you heard me right. This after he initially told the police that someone else had committed the crime. Does that make sense? It doesn't to me either. The video you are about to see will prove that he was lying on the stand and the prosecution had to know. Let me back up. Prior to the Midkiff murder, Brandon Gohagan implicated 2 other Puerto Rican brothers in a shooting he was involved in. Those brothers each received 2 years apiece. Brandon got away scot-free. I interviewed one of the brothers last summer, and he said, "Greg, I wasn't even there. Why would he lie to me 25 years later?" This was never brought up at the De Jesus trial, which some might say is a Brady violation. A Brady violation is when the prosecution suppresses evidence that may help the defense. It is a common reason for retrials. I guess in Gohagan's mind, if it worked once, it could work again. Now, let's get to the trial. The prosecution had absolutely no evidence. All they had was the testimony of an admitted rapist trying to escape a life sentence and this stupid picture. This picture is of a 15-year-old George holding 2 handguns showing off. It was taken 2 years prior to the murder and had nothing to do with the crime.
That's it.
That's it. Gohagan testified that he, George, and Melvin were inside a mosquito tent where they plotted to harm the victim, Margaret Midkiff. We can get 24 people to testify where exactly that tent was located on the Jesus property. It was a couple feet away from the picnic table. Let's read Brandon's actual testimony. Amanda will play the part of the prosecutor.
Now in the evening hours, were you back at the De Jesus house?
Yes, I was.
And can you tell the members of the jury what area of the house were you in or at?
We were outside on the side of the house in a screen house.
When you say screen house, what are you referring to?
It's like a tent, but the sides are screened in to protect us from mosquitoes. The mosquitoes used to bite bad out there, so we would sit in the tent.
Where was this screen house located exactly?
On the side of the De Jesus home.
And what were you doing in the screen house? Who was in the screen house beside yourself, Mr. Gohagan?
George and Melvin. We're going to skip a little forward, down to line 17, or line 15.
All right. Now, when you were in that tent, did the conversation become focused on some certain things?
Yes, it did.
And can you tell the members of the jury what was it the conversation turned to?
The conversation turned to Margaret.
And when you say Margaret, you are referring to Margaret Midkiff.
Yes, I am.
And can you tell the members of the jury who first brought up the subject of Margaret Midkiff?
Melvin. Melvin brought up the subject.
Melvin DeJesus.
Yes. What you're looking at now is the actual crime scene footage. This is the victim's house, 659 Peacock, from the front. The police photographer is panning over the front of the property. In the distance, you can see the Jesus property along with other investigators. Now watch as he zooms in. Pay close attention as the guy in the middle walks away. Freeze it. Okay, here's a close-up of the crime scene. We have a car here, a vehicle there. There are chairs that would later go inside the mosquito tent. There is the picnic table. Just steps away from that picnic table is where that mosquito tent was set up, in this area. Do you see a mosquito tent in that area? Brandon's testimony. The fact that you don't see a tent there makes sense, because the tent wasn't purchased until days after the body was discovered. The victim's son, Jeremy, told the cops that he and Melvin were on their way to go purchase that tent, but their plans were derailed when he found his mother dead. Gohagan obviously got his days mixed up when he was making up that story. Now, fast forward 20 years or so. Brandon Gohagan's name has come up as a suspect in 2 other cold case rape murders from women that he knew from that era. My sources at the police department say that Brandon denies even knowing these women. An old acquaintance of Brandon Gohagan, Al Strickland, says not only did Brandon know the victims, Rosalia Brantley and Victoria Collins, he hung out with them. They also say that there is more than enough evidence to charge Gohagan in at least one of those murders, but much to the chagrin of the investigating officers, those charges haven't been filed. There doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency to charge Brandon with the other murder because he's already in prison. Or it could be that charging Brandon in another rape murder would open the door for a retrial in the DeJesus case. Jessica Cooper was the sentencing judge back in the day when Gohagan was sentenced. Judge Cooper was not there for the trial, but she was there for the sentencing phase for Brandon Gohagan. She was trying to make sense of the case, and she began to ask Brandon a bunch of questions about his involvement in the rape and murder of Margaret Midkiff. He couldn't answer, and they were very pointed questions. And there came a moment when he froze up, and his response to every question was, "I passed the polygraph. I passed the polygraph. I passed the polygraph." Any psychopath can pass a polygraph. When I was in the police academy, we had a polygraph expert come in and brag that he can get any result he wanted just by manipulating the question. Judge Cooper was absolutely onto something when she wasn't buying Gohagan's BS on the stand. If that isn't enough evidence for you, let's talk about touch DNA. It used to be that you needed a quarter size of bodily fluids to test for DNA. In the 90s, technology advanced so much so that you only needed a dime's worth of DNA to test. And that's exactly how they busted Brandon for the rape of Margaret Midkiff. They found absolutely no DNA on the Jesus brothers, and trust me, they looked. Nothing. The technology has advanced so much that today all you need to do is touch something and they get your DNA, because you leave tiny little skin cells on everything you touch. And the brothers know this. They know about this technology, and they've been begging Oakland County to test the DNA. There exists a treasure trove of evidence that can be tested that disproves Brandon's theory that he didn't harm Midkiff, that the brothers did it. The victim's hands were bound. There is DNA all over those phone cords. Her feet were bound. There's DNA all over those phone cords. Brandon took a phone, snatched it out of the wall, snatched it from the answering machine. DNA, test it. There were undergarments. This touch DNA, it doesn't have to be a hard surface. You can even find skin cells on clothing. The undergarments surely have DNA. He rifled through her purse. DNA. Test it. Miss Cooper, you can make this horrific nightmare go away. I've given you all the proof you need. He was being less than truthful. Brandon Gohagan raped and killed women. That's what he did. And he did it more than once. Let's look at this one more time.
Gay.